Hey there, Legal Tea listeners. This is your host, Jenny Roselle. I am back, friends. I'm back, and you can probably tell with my voice, I've been a little under the weather. So, many apologies for having to not have an episode last week, but it's also because I just hadn't recorded any. So, here I am with a little bit of a scratchy throat, trying to get a couple recorded so we can get back on track. So we're back to estate planning of the rich and famous, where we chat about celebrities and their estate planning. Today's episode is on Heath Ledger, a super well-known actor who was the Joker in The Dark Knight. He was in Brokeback Mountain, 10 Things I Hate About You, The Patriot, A Knight's Tale. I mean, he was in a lot of movies. If you don't know who Heath Ledger is, just Google his name and I bet you'll recognize his face. As I usually try to do on these episodes, let's talk a little bit about Heath himself before we dive into his estate plan and what happened estate-wise following his passing. So according to his Wikipedia, Heath was actually from and born in Australia, but in 1998 he moved to the United States for acting. While Heath was linked to a few different women dating-wise, the one to know about for at least this episode was his relationship with actress Michelle Williams, who he began dating in 2004. They actually co-starred, or they starred in the same movie together, Brokeback Mountain. Further, according to his Wikipedia page, in 2005, Michelle gave birth to their daughter, Matilda Rose, which I love her name, Matilda Rose, specifically on October 28th, 2005. And a little fun fact, which I found in my research, was that Matilda's godparents are actually Jake Gyllenhaal, who co-starred in Brokeback Mountain, and Busy Phillips, who was Michelle Williams' co-star in Dawson's Creek. So, yeah, kind of cool. Unfortunately, their relationship fizzled, and it was confirmed in September 2007 that Heath and Michelle had called it quits. It was widely known among Heath's family and friends, including fellow actors and actresses that had worked with him, that he had a very hard time sleeping. According to a New York Times article in 2007 by Sarah Lyall, Heath explained that oftentimes when he took on roles, he had trouble sleeping, and specifically stated that the role of the Joker in The Dark Knight was impacting his sleep. And actually, following Heath's passing, Michelle Williams shared in Interview magazine that as long as she had known him, he had trouble sleeping. And she said, quote, "For as long as I had known him, he had bouts with insomnia. He had too much energy. His mind was turning, always turning." End quote. I can sort of relate to that. On January 22nd, 2008, Heath was discovered unconscious by his housekeeper and massage therapist. He was a mere 28 years old. According to his Wikipedia, a few days later, on February 6th, 2008, the Chief Medical Examiner's Office of New York shared that after an autopsy was conducted, Heath passed away due to acute intoxication from a number of prescribed medications, and that it was considered to be accidental. Following his death, a last will and testament was discovered, and super cool because I'm a nerd about this kind of stuff. I actually found a copy of his will, so I'm attaching a link to it in the source links for this episode. So the last will and testament that Heath had done was actually executed in 2003, which was before the birth of his daughter, Matilda Rose. Because of this, according to an article in The Age, it actually left his $60 million estate to his parents and siblings. The Age article even further explains that Heath also had a living trust called the Ledger Investment Trust, which his parents and siblings too were the beneficiaries of. To add to the drama of things, shortly after Heath passed away, and his estate stuff was hitting the news, a new headline started making its round. that Matilda Rose was not Heath's only child. Headlines started circulating that Heath had a, quote, love child when he was 17 years old with a 25-year-old woman. These started circulating too just a mere 2.5 months after Heath had passed away, which that just is so awful to me. Anyway, so according to US Magazine, the rumor was nothing more than just a rumor. In fact, the lady that people were saying that was the mother and so the lady that was saying that it was like the love child's mother and this lady's husband, who was the stepchild of the child at issue, came out and shut down the rumors. Thankfully, while not all stories have a happy ending, this one does. All things considered, right? So his estate plan definitely should have gotten updated, yes. But it seems the Ledger family had good hearts because they all chose to let everything fall to Heath's daughter, Matilda Rose. According to a TV Guide article, around September 2008, Heath's father, Ken Ledger, stated, quote, "There is no claim. Our family has gifted everything to Matilda," end quote. Which that turned out to be a happy ending because just a month later, in October 2008, a Forbes article shared that Ledger's share of the income from The Dark Knight, from specifically box office revenue worldwide, was around $20 million. So yeah, Ledger family, you are good people, at least from what I know of you. Actually, along these same lines, I stumbled across a blog from a law firm in Fort Myers, Florida called Powell, Jackman, Stevens, and Riccardi. They said something so perfect in a blog they wrote about Heath Ledger and what happened following his passing estate-wise. It said, quote, "If not for the agreement of all family members on the moral and ethical thing to do under the circumstances, this story might have had a different ending," end quote. I 1000% agree. I worked a case a few years ago where dad passed away. He left a trust and he left 32 beneficiaries. He had several kids, so he left them something. And he also left all the grandkids something. So 32 beneficiaries. Anyway, there was something in that case where I had to get unanimous consent on something. And I warned my client, this may not go how we want it to go, but we can try. And by golly, all 32 beneficiaries signed off. And to this day, I am still amazed by that. Some people put family over money. Some people definitely do not. So I'm also going to share a real quick story. Then we'll get back to this estate stuff, only because the story made me happy to hear. So according to BBC News, Heath's final film he was starring in was Terry Gilliam's film called The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus. Don't quote me on that title of the film. And unfortunately, Heath actually passed away when filming was not yet done. Terry Gilliam, instead of scrapping things or starting anew, wanted to pay tribute to Heath still, so he signed on Johnny Depp, Jude Law, and Colin Farrell to play the role that Heath was playing. But he did so as different incarnations of the character in the film. So that is what happened. The three of them stepped in, finished out the filming. And the cool part of this story, I'm sure is what you're like, why are you blabbing about this? The cool part of this story is that all three actors, Johnny Depp, Jude Law, and Colin Farrell, did not take a penny, and instead they donated all their fees to Matilda Rose. Is that not the nicest thing you've heard today? Because me, yeah. So let's talk about what we can learn from Heath's estate planning. Well, the biggie, obviously, is to update your darn plan if you have future children, or at least run your current will by an estate planning attorney to see if there is a need for an update. And there's a little bit of danger in specifically calling out kids' names in a will if you plan on having future children or adopting. Here's a perfect example why. Let's call this episode partly a celebrity estate planning episode and partly a cautionary tale episode, because this story coming at you is a real life story. So a few years back, I worked on a case where a person, prior to his passing, made a will in 2005, naming his then only child as the beneficiary. After 2005, he had another child, but never got around to making a new will. So fast forward some time. Sorry, my throat almost gave out on me. You can tell I was sick last week. So fast forward some time, the guy passes away. He left this will naming the one child as the beneficiary, even though he had two children. His older child was in his early 20s, while his younger child was nearly 10 years old. And his estate was modest. He had like a house with a mortgage, a car, and a bank account. And the net estate after all the expenses and stuff was a whopping $26,000. Here in Indiana, there is a statute that actually specifically deals with children that are called, quote, afterborn, meaning they were born after the person created their will. And the idea of the Indiana legislation basically is to protect people from forgetting kids. Not forgetting kids, but forgetting to update their plan because their plan doesn't have the kids in them. So here, even though the guy forgot to update his will, the younger kiddo was saved because he could anchor to this handy-dandy statute and say, hey, my dad forgot about me and I deserve to be a beneficiary. Beyond that, there is another piece of the Indiana Code that gives the younger child a $25,000 allowance against the estate because he is a minor. So, what I'm about to say will probably make you gasp. So, just quickly follow me. So, the deceased dad's estate had to pay the expenses first out of the estate. And the Indiana Code states that $25,000 allowance is considered an expense. So the younger kiddo got $25,000 out of the $26,000 net estate value, and the older kiddo and younger kiddo split the remaining $1,000. So the older kid ended up getting $500, and the younger kid got $25,500. I'm not even kidding. Could this have been prevented? 1,000% yes. Sure, could have been prevented by the deceased person updating their will to add the second child, or maybe it was his intention to not add the second child as a beneficiary of his will. Well, if that was the case, he should have updated his will to disinherit that child. So, circling back to old Heath Ledger, the message for me is pretty simple. If you have any big life events, I feel like I talk about this all the time on Legal Tea. Any big life events like new children, new grandchildren, divorces, marriages, make sure to, at the very least, run the change by your estate planning attorney. This is exactly why some attorneys talk about coming to see them every year, 5 years, or 10 years, because so many changes happen and the clients don't let us know. While it would be hilarious, we don't have a chip on you to know what you're doing, where you are, and who you're with, so we will not know if changes occur in your life without you telling us. I have to assume that this slip-up by Heath cost his estate and his little daughter, Matilda Rose, who ended up inheriting everything, more money unnecessarily. I'm certain that the lawyers of the estate, as well as the executors and trustees of Heath's estate, had to work extra beyond the scope of a normal administration with a similar estate value. And I know I said this a few episodes ago that if, I, the attorney, am working harder, why would I not get paid more? And the same theory here. Had Heath updated his estate plan, it probably would have been far more straightforward, meaning all the professionals would not be working as much or as hard. And therefore, more would have gone to his daughter, Matilda Rose, which probably would have been what he would have wanted. So let's wrap this episode up, shall we? Next week's topic is a cautionary tale, a real life case I or my office have personally worked on. And during that episode, we're going to be talking about a client I recently worked on that, like Heath, paid way too many professionals, and I'm saying professionals in air quotes, and you'll see why I'm saying that next Tuesday, to help with their father's Medicaid. Tune in next time to find out what happened and where the sharp left turn happened in this family's situation. So until then, Legal Tea listeners, take care and be well.